This is my mum's Keema Prantha recipe. Guys, it's so good. Honestly, this is a proper Punjabi breakfast. Now, this is a flatbread stuffed with spiced mince, and I start my recipe by adding 1 tablespoon of salt to the lean mince. Now, this is lamb mince and it's got less than 5% fat in it, but you can use mutton if you like. I do prefer lamb though over mutton. I'm then going to go in with 1 teaspoon of ground cumin and then roughly about 2 teaspoons of red chilli powder. Now, you want to add chilies to taste. We like our prantha spicy, so I've got about 50 grams of chilies here and a handful of coriander, which I'm just whizzing up in the food processor, and I will add this to my mince as well. I'm just going to add a couple of tablespoons of that chopped coriander and chilli to my mince before I give it a mix. I would recommend you wear gloves if you're using fresh chilies, but it's completely your choice. I'm only adding 2 tablespoons at the moment, even though I've whizzed up quite a bit of chili, because everyone likes a different level of spice. So what we do is we add it later on. First things first, I'm going to test that the keema, the mince that is at the perfect level of seasoning. To do that, I'm just making a small kebab with that mince. So I'm just going to fry a small piece of it. This just allows me to ensure that the salt and the spice levels are correct, because the last thing you want to do is make a bunch of prantha and then they don't taste that good. Nobody likes an under-seasoned prantha. I'm just squashing this down on a pan. I've just put a little bit of ghee in that. And it doesn't take very long. It takes like a couple of minutes to cook on both sides. You can actually just add onions to this mixture as well and make some delicious burgers. But honestly, this prantha is better than a burger right now. I set that little piece of keema, like the kebab, aside, and then I did try it and I realised that I'd like a bit more spice and a little bit more salt. But what I've done in the description of the video is included the exact amount of ingredients that I put into this. Now, you can adjust it, like I said, with the chili and the coriander to your liking, but I've measured out the cumin, the salt and the red chili powder. Everything else, I would recommend you just test it yourself and make sure you're happy with it. The one thing to consider is that if it is a little bit spicy or it tastes a little bit salty, you're going to have 2 layers of dough, trapping this mince in between. I think that sort of balances out the spice levels. So just bear that in mind when you're trying it out. If you are enjoying this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and like on this video, and check out all of my other traditional eats and my baking video recipes. Now that the mince has been perfectly seasoned, we're going to start making the prantha. First things first, we need to make the dough. Now, this is my mum, by the way. This is my mum making them because she's a pro, and it was a lot easier for me to film her making them than filming myself. The dough recipe is listed in the description box. Now, the one thing I do differently with my dough recipe for the prantha is I use plain flour and I use water. I've got a recipe step by step in the description box if you want to know how you can mix that to ensure you've got the right consistency. Okay, so to begin, you want to roll out 2 dough balls, and you want them to be a little bit smaller than sort of tennis ball size. You don't want them too big. If you are used to making roti, then you want to make these dough balls smaller than a standard roti size. And then, like my mum just did, press that between your thumb and your fingers just to flatten the edges before you roll it out with your rolling pin. You want to get the sort of the rotis around about a side plate size. You don't want it like a dinner plate, not too big, because we're going to roll it again once we've put the filling in. Okay, once you're happy that both of your rotis are about the same size, you want to get a heaped tablespoon of that mince and add as much as you need, because what you want to ensure is there are no gaps on the roti whatsoever. You want to be very generous with your filling, because we're going to flatten this out anyway, but you want a layer of that mince running through your prantha, which is the equal sort of size as your roti itself. A tip here for you: when you add your filling, you want to ensure there is about an inch gap between the mince and the outer edge of that chapati dough, because when you place the second layer on top, you want to be able to seal both of those layers of dough together. And then, just like my mum's doing here, press it in between your fingers and your hands and roll it around to ensure that it's fully locked in, because what you don't want is that mince mixture seeping out of that dough. Then you want to get your rolling pin and start very, very gently rolling that prantha. Now, you don't want to put too much pressure on it because that keema is going to burst outside of that dough, and you don't want to rip it, and you'd want to ensure there's a consistency when it comes to your weight distribution as you're rolling it, so that every side of that prantha cooks evenly. The next step is ensuring your tawa is preheated and you place your uncooked prantha on top of the tawa. Now you want to ensure you've got it on a low flame, because the lower the heat, the slower the meat inside the prantha will cook. What you don't want is the dough to cook before the mince does. You just want to be patient with it. It does take a fair few minutes for this, but allow it to just sort of heat up and you'll start seeing the outer edge change colour. And you can see as the dough starts to cook, it will shrink, as will the mince inside the prantha. And then you'll start seeing these bubbles and spots, and it'll start going a very ugly shape and size, but even more delicious. After a minute and a half, roughly to 2 minutes, you want to turn that prantha over and you'll start seeing some brown spots on the bottom, so you know it's started to cook on one side. So it's only fair that you cook the top of it as well. You then want to very generously add about a heaped tablespoon of ghee to your prantha. Just put it under the base, and what you want to do is press down with a spatula, allowing that ghee to sort of spread all over the bottom of that tawa. Now this will allow it to sort of lightly fry, and as you can see, there's a lot of steam building up inside. Those layers are separating because of that steam. That steam is what is going to allow the mince to cook on the inside. So you just want to keep pressing it and distributing that heat inside it, and just ensuring that the dough's lightly fried, because that's what all the taste is. You want to flip that prantha over once you've done the bottom, and you want to start doing the top as well. Now you can see there's a little bit of colour on the bottom now. We're going to keep flipping it throughout the whole cooking process so that the heat is distributed quite evenly and that you get a nice golden crispy brown flaky dough and no raw keema in the middle. We want that keema to be cooked fully all the way through. So one of the things I mentioned earlier, as you're making the prantha, right, the dough will start to shrink. You'll get these like folds and you'll get these like niggly bits, and it's not going to be perfect every single time, but don't worry about it. That's where all the flavour is. This is how you make these prantha. Honestly, as long as you've cooked it all the way through, it will taste delicious. Once you've cooked it through, make sure you serve it immediately. Just look at these beautiful layers. I had to wait for it to cool down because it was too hot, but you've got this beautifully spiced mince in the middle, and look how thin that layer of mince is. It's almost as thin as the dough itself, and it's just so flaky but so delicious. You want to serve this with some yogurt or a chard and a hot cup of desi tea. Give it a go and let me know what you think in the description box below. Thanks for watching.